From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good morning. It's Friday and it's 5:30. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Very happy to see you with us. And good morning to our friend Miller. The weekend is here. What do you have for us?
Well, how about some snow? You know, want to hit the slopes. You know, some models are trying to push 3 to 6 inches up on the mountain in Red Lodge. Here's a live shot right now. It's a come on down. I want to say hello to Diana, who Facebook me. She says, Miller, bring on the snow. I know you have a direct line to the man in charge. Well, there you go. You got some snow at Red Lodge, some good skiing there up on the mountain. Unfortunately, that may be about it as we get into the weekend and high pressure does take over. Now, we are going to be colder today, but temperatures are going to be, boom, right on target where we should be for this time of the season, I think. Seasonal temperatures, and then we're just going to warm up across the weekend. 34 right now at the airport, feels like 23. Winds out of the northwest at about 18 miles an hour. We've got 34 in Ingomar, Roundup and Broadview tag teaming at 31. Hardin at 34, as well as Huntley and Crow Agency right at the freezing mark in Forsyth and Colstrip. Down in Gardner, we're at 21. Clark at 32. Highs today, again, back to seasonal, mainly in the 30s, but we are going to be warming up across the weekend. Sunday's looking fantastic. We'll take a look at that and a whole lot more coming up. Victoria.
We begin with a scary situation in Laurel. A student is found with a gun on school grounds. Thankfully, no one was hurt in the incident. Q2's Casey Conlon tells us what happened and how the administration is reacting.
Laurel Superintendent Linda Philpola tells us a school resource officer got a tip this morning that a student was inside Laurel High School with a gun. The SRO and the school principal then immediately went to his location and disarmed him in an incident that took a matter of minutes.
I have no indication at this time that there was an intent to, shoot up the school or directed towards any students.
Laurel police confirmed the student said he had no plans to use the weapon, but instead brought it from home for his own protection. According to police, the student had shown the loaded gun to other students in a restroom and reportedly told them not to say anything about it or else, end quote. Those students then told SRO Jared Anglin around 9:40 a.m. and Anglin was able to locate and disarm the suspect. He has been charged with assault with a weapon and taken to youth detention. The school did not go into lockdown because Philpola says the building didn't have an administrator in the office at the exact moment to execute it.
One administrator was out with a family situation and the other administrator was in the hallway. You plan, but there's always something a little different and you have to make a judgment call, and if we had any indication that there was further danger, a different course of action would have been taken.
Philpola has seen this before. A Laurel Middle School student was found with a gun on campus in October 2017. While there is no silver lining to these events, Philpola says dedication from the entire community has prevented the worst.
It's really about everybody being aware. We also have great parents that have reached out to us, and I'm hearing this, and or they will see something on social media, and that's the type of communication that is going to prevent something tragic from happening.
The school district and the Laurel Police Department are conducting separate investigations into the matter. In Laurel, Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Thank you very much, Casey. The coroner of Bighorn County, Montana is behind bars this morning. Daryl Nordquist was wanted for felony attempted burglary and failure to appear in Bighorn County Court. This is all related to an incident last month where a woman says Nordquist threatened her and her husband. He allegedly tried to kick in the door at a residence owned by the Hardin Cemetery District, yelling at the couple, "You guys don't know what you have coming." Nordquist is also facing multiple criminal charges from separate cases in Bighorn and Yellowstone counties. A Lame Deer man will spend more than 17 years in prison for a high-speed chase turned shootout with law enforcement. Antoine Three Fingers was taken into custody back in 2020 on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. According to BIA police, it was supposed to be a routine traffic stop, but when officers got close to Three Fingers' vehicle, he took off and started shooting at them. Officers fired back, wounding Three Fingers, and they were able to detain him. In other news, controversy continues to swirl over a natural gas plant set to be built outside of Laurel. As Q2's Lena Howder reports, opponents of the project are making their voices heard.
Nearly 100 people gathered outside the District County Courthouse on Thursday to protest the proposed natural gas pipeline underneath the Yellowstone River in Laurel, with a big deadline just hours away.
Stand up for your power. Come stand up for your home.
They came from Yellowstone County and beyond. Montanans opposed to a plan to build a pipeline underneath the Yellowstone River just south of Laurel.
We wish that Northwestern Energy would be a lot more transparent about what they're doing.
Organized by the Northern Plains Resource Council, protesters gathered outside the courthouse to voice environmental concerns.
Right now they're planning to put a pipeline through a very fragile area of the river and the floodplain. There's wildlife there, there's osprey nesting there.
And also concerns about potential pollution.
We're trying to lower our carbon footprint, and now they're going to put in 8, count them 8, methane plants in Montana.
This methane plant is bad for our health, bad for our communities, bad for our climate.
For some, the project is personal.
We're also really concerned about how close this plant is to where people live, because it's going to have bright lights and make a lot of noise.
But Northwestern Energy argues there's a big demand for a more permanent source of energy, especially as cities like Billings and Laurel continue to grow. The natural gas pipeline would supply the company's proposed new $250 million gas-fired power plant.
Between 40 and 50% of the energy we need to meet that demand comes from market purchases right now in Montana for reliability and for affordability. Need to secure more 24/7 on-demand resources so that we have reliable service at reasonable cost.
And the plant could also bring a lot of money to the county. Northwestern estimates that the plant will generate $346 million in property taxes each year. $1.26 million will stay in Yellowstone County, and the Laurel School District will receive close to $1.5 million.
Oil and gas pipelines do not belong under rivers.
But those gathered here say the risks outweigh the benefits. They're hoping to send a message to county commissioners who are set to meet next week to decide the pipeline's fate.
We're used to long fights, and we're here for the long haul.
In Billings, Alina Howder.
Thank you very much, Alina. Also making headlines this morning, new intelligence has officials fearing Russia could launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in less than 48 hours. President Biden says any American in Ukraine should leave now. He warned there's no scenario that he would consider sending in troops to rescue Americans trying to escape the country. He added that's a world war when Americans and Russians start shooting at one another. There are now multiple blockades along the U.S. and Canada border as Canadian protesters call for an end to COVID-19 restrictions. That includes the border with the town Sweetgrass in Toole County, which remains closed this morning. CBS's Laura Podesta has more about how these protests are affecting American businesses.
The city of Windsor, Ontario is seeking a court order to remove the trucks blocking the Ambassador Bridge.
They don't have the right to affect you or your family's ability to earn a living, and they've gone too far.
Now in its 5th day, the blockade is slowing down the auto industry in Canada and the U.S.
There are hardworking men and women in an industry that's just getting back to full strength, who are now going to be out of a job, at least temporarily.
GM, Ford, and Toyota are among several companies that cut production at plants on both sides of the border due to a lack of parts.
At the best case scenario, we might be back in production early next week, assuming the blockade gets cleared today or tomorrow.
25% of all trade between the two countries passes over the bridge. Some of that has been redirected to nearby routes. Protesters want an end to Canada's COVID restrictions. Blockades have spread to 2 other crossings north of Montana and North Dakota.
We have a right as Americans and Canadians to stand up for what we believe in is right for our bodies and our life.
There are concerns a trucker convoy could start this weekend at the Super Bowl in Los Angeles.
I think DHS is going to let things play out. And be very alert for the possibility of violence.
CBS News has learned the Department of Homeland Security is bringing in additional staff to its incident command post in LA. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
The American Trucking Association's president issued a statement yesterday saying the organization strongly opposes any protest activities that disrupt public safety and compromise the economic and national security of the United States. President Biden plans to begin final interviews for the Supreme Court vacancy next week. The president has promised to nominate a black woman to serve on the High Court. He has a short list of about 4 people and is doing FBI background checks to see if there's anything that might disqualify them. He did not share those names with members of the Senate Judiciary Committee during a meeting Thursday. He says any of the candidates being reviewed would be deserving of bipartisan support. Technology is transforming family farms and ranches, but it's also bringing complications as major equipment manufacturers tighten access to tools and software. MTN's Dennis Bragg takes a closer look at the issue and what Senator John Tester is trying to do to protect farmers.
Whether it's seeding or harvest or anything in between, time is literally money in agriculture. And if you have a piece of equipment to break down, you cannot get it fixed in a timely basis. And by the way, many people have the same equipment and the equipment does break down. Then it puts you at a real loss and you lose income because of that.
It's the issue Tester is tackling with the Agriculture Right to Repair Act, the problem where major companies like John Deere are locking down equipment and software so it can be only fixed by a dealer. That's forcing many farmers to stick with the older equipment they can fix.
So I've got a combine that's relatively new to me, but I got to thinking about it. It's 15 years old, and it doesn't have a lot of this stuff on it that the new combines have. And even if I had the dough to trade it off and get a new one, I'm not sure I would, because I can fix this combine if something goes wrong with it.
Tester says his bill, focusing specifically on farm machinery, attempts to find a balance between convenience and the company's need for product control.
There's always going to be plenty of work for mechanics in these dealerships to do. All we're asking is that the manufacturers give us some documentation, give us some software, so that we can deal with our ability to repair and maintain our equipment.
And he believes that's critical, especially in smaller towns that lost local dealerships.
Is there some feeling, too, of sort of enabling those smaller shops or those, if you will, shade tree mechanics to be able to do that emergency fix, too?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that a lot of those mechanics that are out there in those small towns that are working as independents do a great job, and they can do it in a timely job, and they don't have to drive 100 miles to get to your place. They're much closer. And so all that saves money, saves time, and makes your operation more efficient. Ultimately, what this does, Dennis, if we don't do something like this, is it further consolidates agriculture, and it makes our food chain less dependable.
In Missoula, Dennis Bragg, MTN News.
And before we take a break, thanks to the discovery of a Montana dinosaur, researchers are learning more about how the giant creatures of the past are related to the birds of today. MTN's Jane McDonald has more.
Discovered just outside of Livingston, Dolly the dinosaur is giving us insight to what researchers have never seen before.
The first case that paleontologists, science we know of a bird-like respiratory infection in a dinosaur.
And that honor belongs to Dolly, a sauropod or long-necked dinosaur that lived just south of Livingston. Researcher and director Kerry Woodruff has seen his fair share of long-necked dinosaurs.
So I've looked at sauropod dinosaurs literally all over the world, and I'd never seen anything like this before.
Researchers look at bones and teeth to infer and make observations, but there are only so many things that can be told from bones.
If an animal dies of dehydration, right, that doesn't leave a mark on the bone, so we don't know.
But Dolly is an exception.
Bumpy structures you see here in the side of the bone, and that appears to be the result of an avian-style respiratory infection.
But the fact that we have this infection basically at the connection where the parts of the lung tissue would actually pervade into the bone
gives Director Woodruff indicators that this infection in Dolly is indeed closely related to an infection found in birds because they appear in the exact same place. Dolly proves that even 30 years after discovery, there are still millions of years worth of secrets.
Not only were these dinosaurs breathing like birds, and not only could they get infections like birds, but the fact that the way their immune system worked and responded was much more bird-like than we would have previously known.
At the moment, there are no plans to have Dolly on display at Museum of the Rockies, as she's still being researched to this day, 30 years after her discovery. But that's not to say she won't be in the future. In Bozeman, Jane McDonald, MTN News.
Thank you so much for watching Billings' only local morning newscast and being with us this Friday. Coming up, a Montana woman is using her months-long fight with COVID-19 to help others. We'll show you how. The time is 5:44. Up next, Miller has a look at the forecast.